Drag your husband before you sit and watch this podcast, because this is not only for you but also for him to share equal mental load while raising a child. Today, I had an insightful discussion with Paige Connell, a popular content creator who talks a lot about mental load, equal partnership while raising a child. Welcome to another episode of the Researcher Mom podcast with your host, Dr. Shivali.
Hello and welcome to Lab and Lullabies. And today I am beyond excited to be with Paige Connell. How are you, Paige, today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I am good. So, to start off, can you please tell a bit about yourself and what inspired you to share about your experiences on motherhood on social media and how has been so far?
Sure. So I am a mom of 4 kids. My oldest is 7, my youngest is 2, to give you an idea of their ages. And I work full time and now create content as well. I started sharing just for fun. I didn't really have any intentions of what I was doing with my social media. I was only on TikTok and kind of was hoping people wouldn't find me which is why my handle is not my actual name. And after posting for a little while, I found that a lot of what I was sharing was resonating. And I started to share more about my experience specifically of motherhood and marriage and what I'd learned about, the systems that we're working in, the lack of childcare, the inequities in our homes, and just all of the ways that impacts us as women and mothers. And I've just shared my experience over the last year and a half and have loved kind of building a community of other moms that I get to talk to and dads all the time. And that's really my favorite part.
Lovely. And your content is basically what happens in each and every household, the sharing of responsibilities and managing the kid with your careers and juggling between both of them. So it is like day-to-day story of each and every one, I feel. And you have talked a lot about mental load that comes with the motherhood. So can you please specify what are the daily mental load activities that comes with motherhood, and how does that affected your career so far?
Sure. So I think it depends on your home for sure, right? But say, for example, you and your partner have a very equitable partnership of 4 kids, right? You live together, everything's pretty 50-50, it's all good. Well, when you have kids, say you were the person who was in charge of laundry and meal prep, that workload has doubled, right? Or more than doubled. And maybe your partner's still in charge of all of the things they were in charge of before kids, but none of that got busier or more, right? Because the lawn didn't double when you had kids. And so it becomes inequitable. And I also think it becomes inequitable just by nature of, especially here in the US, the way that we treat parental leave, right? Women tend to take the brunt of the upfront responsibilities of caring for a newborn because men don't often take parental leave or have access to it. And so as women, we stay home with our children early on, and we're the ones learning how to feed them, and we take them to their doctor's appointments. And when we go back to work, oftentimes all of that responsibility that we've taken on while we've been on maternity leave doesn't get passed back to our partner. We don't get to just hand it back, right? Or share the load more fairly because it just doesn't occur to us or we didn't have the conversations. And so I think oftentimes these inequities that exist often just happen slowly over time. It's like a snowball rolling down the hill. You don't realize it's happening until you're in it. And so much of this is working against us, right? Our careers, the childcare crisis, the motherhood penalty, all of these things really compound and make it much harder, I think, to combat a lot of this.
That's right. And as you mentioned that we do not realize it, or we are brought up in a society so far that it is okay to be busier, it is okay to handle a lot of stress and the mental load that comes with the household activities, that it's the mother's job to do everything. So it has been compounded and it has been brought up in through our society so far. So what do you think, or what were the strategies that you implemented to balance the mental load that comes with the motherhood as well as your career, because because your career is not stopping, it has to move forward. So how do you manage that?
Yes. So I think, it's hard because it definitely depends on your career. I work from home, which is something that is really impactful as a mother. It allows me the flexibility to get my kids off to school without having to do before school care or after school
Yeah.
care, whatever it might be. And so I just think it really heavily is a nuanced conversation, right? Not everybody's
Mhm.
home looks the same and not everybody's career looks the
That's
same.
right.
And so
Mhm.
it's hard to say sweepingly, this will help. But
Yeah, yeah.
for me, it's really been about working with my partner to understand how our time works and the difference between our jobs, right? So
Mhm.
my husband is a shift worker, and when he's done working, he's done working. He doesn't get phone calls, he doesn't get email, he doesn't even have an email. He's done.
Okay.
And my work doesn't really stop, right? When you work a corporate
Right.
job, you're always getting Slacks and emails and things come up and you feel like you're always on a little bit. And so I have more flexibility in my day, but I
Mhm.
tend to work more often because I'm always on, right? And so
Mhm.
we've had to talk about what that looks like and how we support one another. And when I'm at home and I get an email and I say, I need to take that, I need to go, I need to go answer this
Answer
email.
this, yeah.
I need to be able to trust that my husband can hold everything down and I'm not going to have to come back to more work, right? And so for us, it's really about both of us being equal partners when it comes to parenting in particular. I think oftentimes women take on the bulk of the childcare and they're the ones preparing the food for the kids and they know where the laundry goes. And in our house, we both know. We
Yeah.
both know these things. And if I'm not home because I'm traveling or he's not home because he's traveling, we can step in for one another and we know how to do it. Right. The only thing I'm not really good at is our pool because I told him when we bought this house that I don't want to manage taking care of a pool. So if we were going to have a pool, it was going to be his job. But I have rescued a few, frogs and squirrels out of the pool before. But, I think it's important just to be having these conversations. How can you support me? How can I support you? And how can we have an equitable division of labor, but also time? I
That's
want
right.
free time. You want free time, right? How do we have these conversations and make sure that both people are feeling supported?
I certainly agree with you regarding I agreed you more on the pool part because when we bought when we bought our house we also had like what is necessary and what we do not want to do, like we both did not want to mow the lawn, so we have
Yeah.
bought a house which is like well maintained and we are paying HOA, but that comes with a price, like we
Yeah.
wanted something that we are not going to do this. So,
Yeah.
like, do you guys have certain rituals that you follow towards the like beginning of the month, beginning of the year, or beginning of a week? Like, how does the week look like, and what are the responsibilities? Because most of the time, like, my partner is traveling, or you may have to travel for meetings and something like that. So, how do you guys manage when some of like one of the partner is traveling and you have to solo parent?
Sure. So luckily, neither of us travel too often. My husband
Mm-hmm.
can work very, very long hours, but we try not to travel too much. But I think the thing is, we actually don't have a ritual of every month, every year, every week. What we do instead is really we reconnect around changes in our kids' schedules. So
All
summer
right.
break, school vacation week, whatever it might be, right? So it's a new sports season. So we're not doing baseball anymore. Now we're doing hockey, and hockey starts at this time. And so we really try to kind of reset as needed based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if I'm traveling for work, we'll sit down that week and say, okay, what do you need to cover? How's that going to work? How are we going to figure this out? What kind of childcare do we have, et cetera? But for the most part, once you become a parent, oftentimes your schedule is dictated also by your kids, right? So
Right.
we're having these conversations of, hey, he wants to do baseball. The only practices there that are available are Tuesdays and Thursdays. I can't do Thursdays. Can you do
Mm-hmm.
Thursdays? No, you can't do Thursdays. So it has to be Tuesday. But can we do Tuesday? Well, this kid has dance on Tuesday, right? And so then we're having this conversation all the time.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of kids. So not everybody has to juggle multiple kids' schedules, but even with one kid, the schedules are really crazy, or they can be. And that's how we do it, right? So we sit down and we kind of look ahead at that 2-month period of time and
Mm-hmm.
try to get a weekly schedule going.
Yeah.
Um, Even things like tubbies, right? Like we are like, okay, the older kids are going to do it at this time and the little kids are going to do it at this time, and we really are super scheduled
Yeah.
just because it makes our lives easier.
Right. And once you have a schedule, we know the predicted things that
Yeah,
are coming up, and that makes it easier, like mentally also, like what is coming up, and so you are mentally prepared for it.
and it helps the kids too,
Yes.
right? The kids know the schedule. So, they're not grumbling about the fact that they have to go take a shower right now. Like we
Yeah.
always take a shower at this time. So go take a shower. And, everybody in the house is part of it. It's because I think that's important too. As your kids get
Yeah.
older, we start to involve them in these conversations. And something as silly as, my husband and I share the labor as much as we can. But also now that my kid is older, I tell him, like, you empty
Yeah.
your own backpack, my friend. This is no longer my job, I'll help you. I will double check, right? I always go in the backpack after. But when he gets home from school, he's doing that now. And I'm no longer the only person responsible
Mhm.
for his backpack.
That's right. And involving kids in the daily activities as they grow older is quite important because
Yeah.
from childhood they are trained to do this. And so what the whole of the mothers are facing right now of carrying the mental load, he would not have to do that. Like he would have a shared partnership with his like partner, right?
Hopefully. I mean, I think that's my goal at least. And I think a lot of people are trying to raise children who are aware of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening around them and be able to participate in what's happening around them. And, for me, that's really important. I want to make sure that my children, all of them, my daughters and my son, understand what it looks like to be an
Right.
active member of their house, right?
Yeah.
Because when they grow up being an active member of their house in an age appropriate way, when it's age appropriate, right? I'm not asking my kids to mow the lawn. They're 7 years
Yeah.
old, right? But they are participating. They know where their clothes go. They hang up their own towel after their
Mm-hmm.
shower. That is part of them learning, hopefully. So when they're adults, they no longer have what we all have. I think in my
Exactly.
generation, a millennial, a lot of men weren't raised to notice. They weren't raised to think about the laundry or the dishes. They just were there and somebody
Yeah.
was cleaning up after them. And that is how we got into this position where societally we didn't expect much of them.
That's right. That's certainly right. And I want to talk more about the mental health that gets affected with the mental load that we
Yeah.
carry each and every day. So, like now that you have an equitable partnership with your partner, like how does mental health look for you?
So I've always had a therapist. Well, not
Okay.
always, but since I was 26, I've had a therapist, which is when my husband and I got married,
Mm-hmm.
around that time. And I decided I wanted to start therapy at that time, and I'm so thankful that I did,
Mm-hmm.
because I also had her with me, through my pregnancies and my
Yeah.
births and being a parent and my struggles in my marriage. And it's been so important to me. I think there's a couple things that can happen, when we're in these moments in our marriages, or in parenting that feel really hard. It can feel very isolating,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you don't have the words to say what's happening, right?
That's
That's
right.
a comment I get a lot on my videos and in my DMs, which is, oh my gosh, I've been dealing with this and I just didn't know how to say it. Thank
Yeah.
you for saying it. And I was there. I was there for years. I was angry and resentful and frustrated, and I just wasn't happy. And I wasn't depressed. I wasn't anxious, but I wasn't happy. And I didn't know why. And I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to talk about it. And I didn't know what it was. And once I did, it was so freeing and liberating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was also able to recognize, well, of course I'm not happy. I haven't had 5 minutes to myself in 3 years. I don't get to go to yoga anymore. I don't get to see my
Yeah.
girlfriends for dinner. I don't get to do all the things that used to bring me joy. Yes,
Right.
my children bring me joy, but so do other things. And I don't have time for those anymore. And so it opened up a conversation about, how do we make time now? What do
Mm-hmm.
we do to make time now? How do we prioritize our mental health so that way we can be better parents to our kids? Because if I'm unhappy, then I'm not a great mom. And when
That's
you're
right.
unhappy, you're not a great dad. And us not being happy with each other also isn't good for our kids either. So, I think it's so important to, one, have time for yourself, and time for yourself that's not just a shower, right? But is actual real time. And if you can, I think therapy is fantastic. I also think I love something like yoga, where it's for me, being in a room where I can't hear kids yelling. Like, I go to a studio, I can't do it at
Mm-hmm.
home. I don't
Yeah.
want to hear my kids. I don't want to see the mess. I don't want to have my phone. I want to be alone in a room with my thoughts and just breathing and not having to be needed for an hour, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, that really protects my mental health, because most of my day, from the second I open my eyes, I hear somebody saying mom. and I see all of the things I need to do. And I just want some time where I don't have to do anything for anybody else but myself.
Right, right. And means I'm reading a book called Self Care by Pooja, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
real self care. And she very neatly makes a difference between the fox self care and a real self care. Where going to a yoga, yes, it is a self care, but knowing that that is needed for you to get back into your motion or get back into your thoughts again is what real self care is. And that, I think, the realization of to most of the mothers who are caught up into this mental load is important, right? So what can be the advice that you give to a lot of mothers who are working and managing the mental load to know that it's time for a self care, or you need that time?
I think the first thing is knowing that you deserve the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? You shouldn't feel guilty for taking an
Yeah.
hour for yourself, but you just shouldn't, right? Because I think oftentimes as women, we've been conditioned to think about what we can be doing for everybody else all the time, for our work, for our kids, for our partner, for our home, and for our extended family, right? We feel like we always need to be doing and be
Yeah.
productive and cleaning, cooking, laundry. There's always something to do. And so when you take an hour to go for a walk or read your book or whatever it is, oftentimes we feel guilty. I know
Mm-hmm.
I've felt guilty for doing that.
Yeah.
But I do think that's part of it, right? Remove that guilt as much as you can. It is important, it is valuable, and it is good for your kids to see. It's
Mm-hmm.
important that they see us do these things, to take time for ourselves. And so I think that is part of it. So first, recognizing that you deserve the time,
Yeah.
that you're worthy of that time. You don't need to feel guilty about taking that time, which I know is super hard. And I still feel guilty all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I will feel the guilt and then I'll tell myself like, no, I'm not
I
going to feel
deserve this.
guilty. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel guilty about this. I deserve this. It's okay for me to do this. So
Yeah.
that's one part. And then I think the other part is finding the time, which is
Yeah.
hard. That part is hard. Um, this summer I haven't had
Found
much
that.
time. I feel like I've fallen off the bandwagon summer. If you're a parent with older kids in the summer, you know that between summer camp and no school, it's just crazy. And I haven't had time to do a lot of self-care. And I'm feeling it, to be honest, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
can say that out loud. Like I know that I haven't taken the time for myself and I'm not loving it for me, for my kids, for my partner, and I want to get back into it. And I'm part of me is like, okay, we're back to school in 3 weeks. Like I can survive. But also knowing that there's phases of life, right? So when you have a
Yeah.
phase of life where you have the time, take advantage of it because
That's
you
right.
know there's gonna be phases where you won't. And I think that we uh, everything is a phase, with kids, and when you can find that space for yourself, it's really important to do so.
Yeah, that's right. So coming to the phases of life, there are also phases in your career also, right? Where juggling motherhood and careerhood is often seen as a difficult task. So how are you managing with motherhood of like four kids, and then with a career in corporate America, which is quite busy, as you mentioned, like getting
Yeah.
slacks and meetings? I can resonate with it because both of us are working, like my partner is working in corporate, but I am a researcher, so the brain doesn't shut off. Like I continuously have to think about the new experiments and find out ways to troubleshoot them and find out answers to the questions that are raised. So I can relate to the point where the brain doesn't shut off, but so does your career also cannot halt when you become a mother. So how can one navigate motherhood and career together? Means I know there cannot be a balance. It is like management and integrating into your life. So what are your
I
thoughts on it?
I think it depends again, it's nuanced, but I think for me, to be honest, I think I have taken my career's taken a bit of a backseat, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
still very present, I still work hard, but I am probably not going as hard as I was before
Yeah.
kids in my job. I worry less about answering that email before the end of the day, and I'll just answer it tomorrow because I just don't have the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I've given myself a little bit of grace there and noticed that I'm still able to achieve a lot in my career, even with
Yeah.
that. And I think setting boundaries, if you can, is important. My team might Slack me at 6
Mm-hmm.
p.m. I'm probably not going to answer it because I'm in the middle of dinner time and I don't have my phone and there's four kids crying and yelling and whatever, right? And so it just looks very different. I think it's really important that you know your workplace, right? I think for me, I have childcare, which is I couldn't have a job without childcare, and so that is infrastructure that I think is incredibly valuable and important to talk about. You know, without our daycare or after school care or a part-time nanny, I couldn't do any of the things that I do. And so that's also incredibly important to the conversation. And so I think it's really, before having kids, looking and saying, this is going to change. But it also doesn't just have to be my career, right? So has my husband's career changed? How are we accommodating
as a
for
family
this, right?
moving ahead and
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Because oftentimes women are the ones who are like, okay, I'm going to take the more flexible job, or I'm going to work from home, or I'm going to work remote, or whatever it might be. And in reality, men can do that too. And I think it's important that we expect them to. And I'm not saying in a way that would financially hurt your family, but I think oftentimes women are the ones that are looking at their career and saying, okay, well, what's going to give? And men often don't have to think about that. And so I do think it's important that within a marriage, if you are in one, it is important to have that conversation.
Yeah, speaking about conversations, like this is something like a hard conversation to be have. Like we always have conversations, but something touching the career or the mental aspect. So how do one, like, yes, you are married and the conversation should be seamless, but sometimes we as mothers, we hesitate to have conversations regarding this. Like as you mentioned, that it is assumed that the mother has to take the load, like mental load, or even in her career the setback, it has to be the mother. So how does one communicate effectively? Like it depends on partner, like couples to couples, but what is your general advice?
Yes, I always say, you know your partner best,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you're going to know how they can communicate or not communicate. You also know if they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And so that can be hard. That can be a hard thing to kind of reconcile with, which is my partner willing and able to hear this and
Yeah.
accept what I'm saying and be on board to work with me here? And so I think that's the first part of going into a conversation is understanding what you're walking into.
Mm-hmm.
I think for my husband and I, this is a very emotional conversation.
That's right.
So much of
Because
it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, because one has worked so hard for the career, like with you, even the partner has worked so much. So as you mentioned, like it is a very critical and emotional conversations where you have to really think what you say, because feelings can be hurt in this scenario, right?
Yes, exactly. I think it's very emotional because our careers define us before we have kids, oftentimes. Like we feel defined by our careers and we expect to be defined by them for a very long time.
That's right.
And sometimes that changes after you have kids. You no longer feel defined by your career and maybe you don't even want to. You're like, I actually don't care. I just want a paycheck, and that's okay. But these conversations are hard to have, right? And so I think going into them with empathy for one another and an understanding of, who you are and what you want is really important. And then I think for me, I think it's really important to go in as much as you can, not in a heated moment, right? Don't come into the conversation after you've had the worst day of parenting in your life and you felt like your partner didn't support you. If you can avoid it. Try to come to it when you're both in a good place to have a productive conversation, but also come with tangible things that you want to talk about, right? If there's examples of where you need support or need your partner to adjust or what you want to achieve in your career. If you say to them, this is what I'm going for, and that's what that's going to require, I need you to step up and pick up at daycare for the next 6 months because I'm going to be going after this promotion and I'm going to have to stay late every single day. That's a hard conversation to have, but if you can kind of talk about it in these, I also think in like chunks of time, because I think that's the thing. It's like some days my career is going to take priority and some days his career is going to take a priority. And having the conversation and understanding, hopefully, if you're in a good partnership, that some days I'm supporting you and then other days you're supporting me. And it's probably never going to really be totally equal at all times. It just can't be. And so recognizing that, I think, is also a big part of the conversation.
And there will be phases in life where it is the other way around, or you will be supporting or the other one is supporting, and you should be open to that. So it always cannot be regarding the mothers. It also has to be about the partners. So
Yeah.
this is the question I'm heading to is time management.
Mm.
So you have 4 kids, you are working from home, but still working in corporate, where your time is much needed there as well. And you're creating content like every single day. So how
I
do you
am.
do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that it depends on the day. It depends on the day. But I tend to have a pretty structured schedule in life, like
Mhm.
I said, and I think that is a big key to it, which is my kids know that, we're going to get up, we're going to get ready, we're going to have breakfast, we're going to do all these things, and then we're going to get our shoes on, and then we're going to get in the car, right? So like my mornings are very organized because I do mornings by myself. My husband is not home in the mornings.
Uh-huh.
And so I am, to the T. I'm like, it's 8:11. We have to get in the car, everybody, now, else we're going to be late. And so they know the schedule. I know the schedule. When it comes to my work days, it really does vary based on the day of the week,
Yeah.
the just how the week is. I try really hard to, I'm in my chair by 9 typically,
Mhm.
and I try to be done by 5. And
Mhm.
to be honest, I'm not very good about taking a lunch break.
Yeah.
I am not good oftentimes about finding time to work out. And I'm in this phase of life where certain things don't happen and I wish they did. And I'm trying to figure that out, right? But
Mhm.
it is hard because, I want to be done working around 5:30 so I can go pick up my kids and do
Yeah.
dinner with my kids. And, daycare closes by 6. So I kind of have to be done. And so it is hard. The time management is tricky. I try to look at it day by day. I think about my priorities for that day and what I'm
Mhm.
going to do. And I also have a supportive partner. So,
Yeah.
last night I was doing a podcast at 8 o'clock at night. And so I had to dip out of bedtime early and say, like, hey, I'm gonna need you to do bedtime by yourself. So I think, it's also just kind of having those conversations and supporting one another when that occurs. But right at the same time, he worked all weekend. And so when he
Yeah.
worked all weekend, I was on kid duty all weekend. And so it is constantly kind of just working together to manage our time and make sure that both people have equal opportunity to do the things that they need to do for work and for the kids, but also hopefully sometimes things we want to do as
That's
well.
right. That's right. And also communication comes in here as well. Like knowing that you have a podcast recording at 8. So your partner should know that because he should not have been planned any event at that time. So communication is the key in any aspect, like whether you're dealing with mental health, whether you want to follow your passion, create content, or juggle between your careers. Like
Yeah.
communicate, like you want this because no one is going to read your mind and understand that, hey, she wants this or I should be doing this, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also important though that, oftentimes the mind reader thing, right? People will be like, oh, women
Yeah.
expect you to be a mind reader, but that's because women have been expected to be in charge of it all. So actually, my advice to this is kind of from the get-go, men should be equal owners of the calendar and the schedule. They should be
Mm-hmm.
equally as engaged. They should have the calendar on their phone and be able to look at it and
Yeah.
see, she's booked on this day and I know she's booked. So if she's booked, then I need to do X, Y, and Z, right? And so, yes, you have to talk about it. So important to communicate. But I do think it's really important that we don't have the narrative of it's your job to tell him, about the calendar. It's
Exactly.
our job to communicate with each other
Like share
and
the
to
calendar. Yeah.
yeah, express your needs. But it's really important, I think, that we have shared ownership over these things.
Right. And you speak a lot about childcare and the logistics that comes with the childcare. So, how do you think that the policies need to be changed, and what would that look like regarding the mental health? I know it is a very deep topic.
Yeah.
But
I think every family deserves safe and affordable childcare. I
yeah.
think we undervalue childcare and just care work in general, and even stay-at-home moms, right? We don't value
Mhm.
that work and we don't
That's right.
pay for that work. And it's so important. It's the backbone of our economy. Without it, our economy would not be doing what it is doing, right? It would cause a lot of issues. Yet we still don't pay care workers.
Mm-hmm.
Families are paying more than 20% of their annual income on
Yeah.
childcare, depending on where you live. I live in Massachusetts. It's one of the most expensive states for childcare. And so I think there's so much that can be done. I think this is infrastructure, right? I think it is part of the infrastructure of our country and our economy and our society, and we all deserve access to safe and affordable childcare, and care workers deserve to be paid well. So I hope that in the future we have subsidies for childcare, that the government subsidizes that cost. I hope that care workers get paid for the work that they do. I hope that we get access to paid parental leave, that everybody gets that. You know, I only ever got 8 weeks of leave with my kids. And I didn't think much of it at the time, and now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, 8 weeks. They were, oh my,
Your
I can't
body
believe
is not healed in 8 weeks. Like,
my body is not healed, and these babies are babies. I mean, they're tiny, and it's just sad to think that's all I got at that time, right? I'm bummed that I didn't get more than that, and I hope for everyone else, men included, that we all get access to parental leave with our children, and that it doesn't harm our careers. I also think it's really important to have universal parental leave for men and women, because I think until men are expected to participate at home and in parenting in the way that women are, it will continue to be inequitable in the workforce. Women will continue to be paid less simply for being mothers and be passed up for promotions and job offers because they are mothers. Because people associate mothers with having to have the more flexible job and the sick days for kids and all of the things. And so I really hope that we can see change here. It won't impact me, probably, which is okay, right? I don't care. I want other people to have access to these things because I think it's so incredibly important.
Yes, it is incredibly important, because once your child is safe and you have a lot of time, the mental loads kind of reduces to the half, because the mental load also comes with the management of the income, right? Like if 20% goes into the childcare and then you have to manage with the rest, and not all the partners bring in equal amount of income, so there can be up and down, so every family then is stretched, and that indirectly comes on the mother, where she has to take the setback.
Yeah. And there's this assumption that women don't earn as much, but women continue to earn more and more and more, and eventually, hopefully, will earn as much, if not more than men, depending on the relationship, right? And so, you know, in my home, we're pretty egalitarian. We earn almost the exact same income. And so it is weird, right? That there's always this assumption that if my kids are sick, that I'm going to take the day off. And not him, right? And it's like, why am I the one always taking the day off? And I think we really have to change the narrative around how we view these things.
Yes, but you are doing a great job changing the narrative through your social media content, and I hope one day we achieve that in a way. So we spoke a lot about time management, communication, and also childcare. Now, coming to the end of the podcast, I want to play a little bit of rapid fire with you.
Sure.
So is it tea or coffee to kickstart your day?
Oh, coffee.
What is the most used emoji on your phone?
Laughing face.
So ebook or physical book for bedtime stories and for your reading?
Kindle. For me, Kindle for me, real books for my kids.
Are you a early bird or a night owl?
Neither. I wake up early-ish and go to bed at a reasonable time.
If you could invent something to make motherhood easier, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. That's a good question. I don't know. Some machine that just cleans my house would be great.
Oh, yeah. If you could have a superpower, what would it means? It comes to the same previous question, but superpower navigating your motherhood and career, maybe.
Oh, I really wish I had the ability to help myself and the people around me. This is a weird one, but like emotionally regulate, right? Like I feel like all day long I'm emotionally helping my kids regulate, and myself and my partner, and we're all just dealing with so many big emotions all day long. I wish I had, you know, that power to help my kids, especially kind of deal with the big emotions that they have as young kids, because I think that's one of the most draining parts of motherhood, is being like, they're screaming about nothing and I don't know why and I can't help them. And now I'm stressed out and I'm angry, right? And it's this whole, like, we go in a circle. And so I wish I had that superpower, which I'm working on.
But I think it is a superpower, but because I know the panic that goes behind that moment when the kid is screaming and you have no idea what to do. Like,
yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. But thank you so much, Paige. It was lovely having a conversation with you. I'm sure that certainly the efforts would bring change at one day.
I hope so. Thank you so much.